Hello, everybody. Welcome to Pod and Deliver. Today, we're talking movies that get teenagers right. And we're talking the 2015 film, Me and Earl and the Dying Girl. With me is Jacob. How are you, Jacob?
Great.
Me and Earl and the Dying Girl is directed by Alfonso Gomez Rejon, and it's based on the book by Jesse Andrews, which is really good. And it's you should read it, I believe, along with the movie, or see the movie, then read the book. It doesn't even matter because it fills in a lot of holes that you might benefit from reading, because this is a kid who just wants to disappear. What a brilliant kid, as a lot of our kids are. They're brilliant in their own ways, and he tries to disappear by knowing everybody, but he does it in a surface level. And it's really interesting because he knows every group, he knows every kid, but he doesn't want to go beyond that. And nobody can say to him, "Hey, you don't know anybody." Yeah, I know everybody. And here's the problem: Me, Earl, the Dying Girl. Earl being a kid that he makes films with, and it's such a love affair to film, which we could get into. But it's also about this girl who's dying from cancer, and his mother, who gets into his things, gets into his world too much, is actually a very important figure in this story, because at one point she says, "You need to visit Rachel. You need to visit this girl. You need to stick with her and stay with her." And I'll be quiet, Jacob, but I will say, for me, what makes the movie real in terms of getting teenagers right is this: the first part anyway, the first thing that cued me into this is this discussion when, after his mother tells him, "You have to go visit this girl who's dying. She's your classmate." And he goes and he knocks on her door, and the mother, played by Molly Shannon, just to perfection. She's so emotional. She's so intense. It's played for laughs, but it's also, it's emotional.
Yeah.
Her daughter's dying.
Yeah.
But when Greg, played by, oh my gosh, I'll tell you all the actors. Hold on a second. I'll tell you who he's played by. But when Greg looks at Rachel, I was so caught up in the movie, and tells her, "Please, I want to spend time with you." And she says, "Why should I? I don't need a pity. I don't need," and he goes, "Can you just do it because you'll be doing me a favor?"
Right.
It's because my mom's making me. It felt so authentic. There's a lot going on in this movie. I will say, to answer the question, does it get teenagers right? It does. And it's a very, very good film. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think this week's films we're doing, like you shared, we're looking at students and do these films get it right regarding kids? You and I are in the classroom, so maybe we don't know. We were once teenagers, and B, we see them every day. Doesn't mean we get 100%, and not that these movies get it 100%, but this one, I agree with you, it does get it. And that scene that you were mentioning regarding Greg going to see the actress, her name is Olivia Cook, but she plays.
By the way,
Rachel.
the actor, Thomas Mann.
Oh, that's fine. Go ahead.
He's great. Go on. Sorry.
Yeah. And so before he meets Rachel, as his mother tells Greg, "Hey, I want you to go see this girl," he has a little meltdown. Okay, and I laugh because it's real, because I have teenage boys, and I'm like, wow, you never see this in film, where you see kids react to something they don't want to do, and he finally does it, which is great. I will say this: there's these inserts, Ruben, that throughout the film where they will say something like, "Hey, day 74 of visiting Doom Girl," or girl friendship, right? And so, but that is a beautiful part of the film, is that he doesn't want to go see her, but he sees her every day, and he starts digging her as a friend, and he cares about her. And as she comes from her chemotherapy, he helps her into her house, and it's just so lovely. And they're talking and they're watching film together, as you shared, Ruben. He's artistic. He loves to make these films that are based on, I mean, bad versions of great films like Apocalypse Now and Godfather and things like that, and so Seven Seal. And so he's having her. He doesn't let anybody, as you shared, Ruben, he doesn't let anybody really into his arena. And even his best friend Earl, he calls him his co-worker, because he doesn't let him get into that circle around him, right? Let him in. And so with her, it's hard for him to let her see those movies, but once he does, they enjoy them together. And so now the circle is a little tighter, Earl, her, and Greg, Rachel and Greg. And so then you just see that bonding happening. And then of course, I mean, the title kind of gives it away, this dying girl. And one of my favorite parts of it is that the teacher in this film, this teacher is great. He is played by John Bernthal, right? There's a scene where Greg and Earl get high off some of his pho, because his teacher eats pho at lunch, and they get high and they think the teacher put marijuana in the soup. And so it comes out in a bus where Greg says, "Oh, Mr. McCarthy left put marijuana in his pho." And so it came out in the classroom, and Mr. McCarthy's there in the class. He's like, "Oh, Greg, tell us what happened." Instead of saying, "I didn't do that," or "Hey, what are you crazy kids? Why are you drinking my soup?" He said, "Oh, just why don't you step back and tell us the steps of what happened that day." And Greg is telling steps, and he realizes, "Oh, I ate these cookies, bought from a guy who makes, marijuana with, cookies in them, marijuana and cookies in them." And then he realized, oh, it wasn't Mr. McCarthy.
So he asked questions.
He asked questions to get the bottom of it. And which is really great because, go ahead.
Yeah, it's great because what?
It's great because he didn't defend himself, or he didn't say, "What are you doing drinking my soup?" and upset and throwing a big old, letting the kid know how wrong he was. He just said, let's step back here and let's find out what happened here. Let's back up a little bit. What happened right before you ate the soup? And then he figured it out that, oh, it wasn't Mr. McCarthy. And
I'm glad you brought up the teacher, because I wasn't going to bring that up, because there were so many good things about this.
Oh, man, there was.
The teacher is good in what you brought out. He asked questions. He didn't let ego take over. And but also very subtly, he allowed these two teenagers, Earl and Greg, to sit. How cool is it that we're not talking about the actors' names? We're so involved because we're thinking about the characters.
Earl and Greg, yeah.
Earl and Greg, to sit in his lounge, in his space, comfortably, where they
his resting space,
yeah, and they enjoy him, and he enjoys them.
Oh yeah.
It's a very important point. You have to love kids to get to be in this type of.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think this is why I brought him up too, Ruben. Ruben. That in the film he says, you know what? He talks about his father. He knows that Rachel is dying. He goes, you know what? I didn't have a good relationship with my father, and people would tell me how my father was great and all this. And he's like, what? And he goes, until he died. And then I started learning more about him. And so Greg listened to that. And so when Rachel is sick and then when she passes, he starts, that's one of the best parts of the film, right? He starts really learning who Rachel was. She was an artist. She had things, she had layers. And he just starts peeling these layers like, oh my goodness, this was a cool girl. He knew her, he liked her, but he now even started seeing those layers, and he remembered what that teacher told him.
I want to mention a couple of things that are very vital to the success of this film. First of all, the actors. I mentioned Thomas Mann, who played Greg. R.J. Seiler, who plays Earl. He is a fantastic actor. Catherine Hughes, who plays Madison, the girl who he likes. And there was a really fun sequence where every time she walks up to him, he imagines being the chipmunk, just destroyed by the big moose, because she's playing with his emotions, or so he thinks.
Right.
And Nick Offerman, who plays the father, who is obsessed with film. So his son becomes obsessed with film, and his best friend becomes obsessed with film. Yeah. Nick Offerman. Connie Britton, who plays Greg's mom.
Mm.
really, and that scene that I mentioned where she says, you don't visit her, you are going to regret it for the rest of his life. And I love his response. Mom, add that to the list of things I'm going to regret for the rest of my life. It is a great scene.
Right.
Molly Shannon, I mentioned, and you mentioned Olivia Cook, who plays Rachel. Fantastic movie. And last thing I want to say before I'll give you the last word.
Yeah.
There's you mentioned some of the films that they parody.
Yeah.
2 p.m. Cowboy.
Yeah.
Midnight Cowboy.
Yeah.
A Sockwork Orange. Do you remember Apocalypse Now, the parody they created for Apocalypse Now?
Oh, shoot. Did it have to do with flowers?
A box of lips. Wow.
Right.
Senior Citizen Kane.
Yeah.
My Dinner with Andre the Giant.
It's so classic.
It's fun how they create these films, and you see bits of these films in that. It's the one thing that's different from the book. The book doesn't get deep into that aspect of it. You just get you get a lot of Greg's voice and his connection with Rachel. It's great in its own way. Of course, the movie is too. Any last words about Me and Earl and the Dying Girl?
I just want to just collaborate what you just shared regarding the parents. They were, not only were they great, it's different than the other two films that we're going to review this week, where there's a presence of parents and presence of guidance, and even with a teacher. And I think that's so important in children's lives, right? And Nick Offerman is a sociologist at a college, and his son has problems with people, friendships, and he's a father who teaches it, and so it's so ironic. And I know, it's kind of like a little joke, whoever the gentleman who wrote this, he's just laughing as he's writing this, like, this is funny, and it is. But what a great choice with Nick Offerman. He just, he's always feeding these kids little, like, bat wings or this crazy stuff. But great film, and I definitely advise you all to see that if you really want to get to feel what kids are going through today and how they are, for sure.
Jacob, does it get teenagers right?
It does. I think so.
I agree.
I think so.
Okay, everybody, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time on Films That Get Teenagers Right. Bye-bye.